Roles of a denizen. A content creator is a user that creates posts and is rewarded based on the quality of their content. A content evaluator is a user that helps assess the quality of content and enforces community standards. The evaluator is effectively taking part in a marketplace to curate content and is rewarded for early evaluation. A content consumer is a user that wishes to find and consume the most valuable content in a given subject area or within a community. A lair owner is a person holding tokenized ownership of all or part of a community lair. Owners are rewarded with a portion of all mining activity happening within their lair. Owners are incentivized to build the best community of content creators and evaluators.
Guten Tag, y'all. Welcome to the DENDAO meeting for September 29th, 2022. This call happens every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern time, which I guess would be noon Pacific time. We've got Joe Dragon here with us as usual. And we also have a couple of denizens, Greg from Rivet, who you may know from the World Blockchain Roundtable, and I Am For I Am, who you may know from the Wednesday morning show that I do on Wednesdays in the morning. So we've got an agenda over here we're going to run through. We're going to talk about the new layers. We talked about the winners last week. They are live now. So you can go post in them. You can earn rewards by doing that. And you can go treat them as your own personal playground. Go throw some UFOs in the UFO layer. There is one post in the UFO layer, so getting off to some kind of start there. I haven't checked out phishing yet or GIFs. GIFs should be, I hope, GIF rivals memes. I hope that we have a GIFs and memes battle at some point.
GIF should the community there should lobby Den to implement WebM.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we could do that as soon as we have WebP for photos. Because I'm tired of trying to steal dank meme just to find out that it's a .webp and Den doesn't support that format.
Yeah,
so that's something we can work on.
GIFs are so much fun to make, and I love making random GIFs. That's going to be a fun one.
Okay, so
I'm going to call them GIFs, and so I'm going to refuse to post in there.
I'm
going to refuse to post in UFOs.
Let's
because
remove I Am For I Am from the show.
If you don't share the pronunciation, then that is a strike.
We can't.
How we run things.
It's a
We can't have a
blasphemy.
community vote on that one, man, because it's too divisive. Even though the creator was pretty explicit about the pronunciation.
The creator is an idiot, though. That's my primary evidence.
Spoken like a fan of open source.
I only wanted to poke the bear. That's all I wanted to do.
Yeah, no, that's great. I imagine that will never be. There will never be consensus on that. It will always be an argument. It will always be disagreement.
Yeah.
Cool. So we've got Hyperion Frequency and Litecoin Lisa in the chat. Hello, thanks for joining us. Let's get on with it. Do we want to show those layers, or I think we can kind of find them if you guys go look in the list of layers. They are in there. I do want to welcome another layer that was not part of the LCP that is called Mighty. So that's Team Mighty. You might know Lisa Mighty Davis, also from the World Blockchain Roundtable, as well as Truth Tuesdays with Satoshi Shan and some other work that she does on her channel. I know she has shows Monday, Tuesday, this Friday, tomorrow. I'm going to be joining them for Friday Happy Hour, since they just opened their layer and they're onboarding their community there, getting used to it, figuring out where the widgets and buttons and knobs and bells and whistles are. I will be over there hanging out with them, having a beer for Friday Happy Hour. And if you want to see what that looks like, go check it out. Mostly, I imagine I'll be doing Q&A and just introducing some basic parts of Den and walking through the basics of that. So if anybody has a community like that, or like anything really, and you would like some hand-holding and onboarding, I volunteer for that role. Hit me up wherever you can hit me up, and we'll get on that. I'll come hang out with your community and talk about how Den works.
Nice.
Let's see here. Oh, Lisa mentioned, so I don't forget, she is doing a weekly lot giveaway. The way that I understand this is going to work, since they do every Friday, they have a Friday happy hour. She's going to post, I believe, Sunday night or maybe Monday. She'll have a post up basically running that whole week. So it'll be the Friday happy hour post for that week. And then by the time we get around to the actual show, she can distribute lot based on participation. So whatever the top couple of posts are or replies within that post can get some ownership. Basically, I think one of the ways is going to be to shout out what your favorite part of the shows were that week. That way you can see who's watching, and the most active people that are participating get to share an ownership and governance of that show and all that stuff. So, all right. So we've got that. So those are the 4 layers that you might have noticed have popped up. They're new. And then last week we did some really good work with Hyperion Frequency was here last week too, to give input and feedback. And we talked about what has now become a proposal for a new evaluator reputation score. And what the proposal, we'll go through that a little bit today. I wrote this up in kind of a hurry. I tried to, trim it back. I did have to trim it back enough to fit. I found out that there's a 4096 character limitation on proposals. So what this is going through is basically how, in general, this metric will work, what it's intended to mitigate or solve, and how it's supposed to improve the Den experience overall. And if I make my screen bigger, I can read it myself, and we'll start from the top. So 4 parts, right? I'll skip down to that part. You can read the details if you want, but I'm going to paraphrase some of this. So we're going to put the leaderboard, if this passes, we're going to put the leaderboard development on hold. We're going to approve the changes to evaluator reputation system, which we don't have. So we're creating that. And then we will implement an evaluator reputation system. And then once that's implemented, we will pick up where we left off, resume the leaderboard development. Now, how does this thing work? We spent some time, like I said last week, talking about how this can most effectively work. It's going to be a per layer or per community setting, right? So similar to the existing reputation system, all denizens have both a site-wide reputation and a layer-specific reputation, and this will be another layer-specific reputation, right? So you can, as a lot holder, or as a layer owner, or an administrator, or however you want to phrase that, somebody who does the voting in the governance system for that layer, you can effectively choose objectively and without pinpointing people or specifically like singling people in or out. You can say, all right, I only want people that are balanced and accurate, or you could say more skillful evaluators, right? I want people that are not just upvoting everything. I want people that are not just downvoting everything. I want people that are both upvoting and downvoting, so that we know that they're thinking both directions, and also not just spamming up and down to make it an even score, also accurate. So within consensus, when they do vote, how often does that person vote within
accurate
predictions? Right? Yeah, accurate predictions, balanced voting. Yeah. That's the core of it, right? So we haven't named, maybe that's something we can mention today and talk about. We haven't named what that'll officially be called, how it's displayed, that kind of thing. So in here, I just put a note saying voter rep, evaluator skill, like whatever. It's the same thing because we haven't named it yet, but that's what we're talking about. So down to components. The first one, I kind of went over it already and said what it is, but balance would be, we talked about a bell curve where the fringes are on one end, it's people that only vote down, and the other end is people that only vote up. And then there will be bands within that, like if you can visualize a bear curve with bands, and the bands have like a range, right? And right in the middle, you might have something like, between 40 and 60. Instead of right at 50, you might be like a range of values, right? And then if you're 100% downvoting, you're on one end. If you're 100% upvoting, you're on the other end. So one of the metrics is that. And then the other one is accuracy, which is how often when you do vote, the idea is to make sure that people are reading what they're evaluating, considering the community that it's in, predicting what that community will like or dislike, and then voting accordingly to that, which takes a little bit more time, but it's also dramatically more valuable than drive-by voting. So those two scores will be combined into a reputation score. And then the lot holders, whenever they're selecting, it should look just like the other reputation settings do already, where you can choose like 1 to 5 stars. But what that'll effectively be doing is if you draw a box around it from the left and right, it'll just be squeezing into the middle. So it's like, let's say you go 2 stars, then you edge out the fringes a little bit. You go 3 stars, it comes more to the middle. And so even more people get boxed out. And it's going to be, depending on the popularity of the layer and how active it is, I imagine that the sweet spot is going to be different for every layer, which is why it's per layer. So there's my kind of like, blah, there it is. And then Greg and I Am for I Am, since you're here with us, maybe we can talk about, we kind of wrote it last week. So maybe we can talk about what needs clarification, if you wouldn't mind giving some feedback on that, and where we can discuss further. What do you think?
Honestly, I'm going to need a little bit of time to digest that.
Okay.
Before I can really properly talk about it. Maybe I Am for I Am has some ideas that can lead us into it, and I can comment further from there. But if not, like, I'm definitely going to need some reading time before I can really give my 2 cents, my 2 gway.
Okay. Well, the issue that we are addressing, and it's probably helpful to talk about that, is that, 2 things. So one issue that I suffer from is that it's really difficult for me emotionally to downvote someone, because I'm like, I want to give you energy and I want you to earn rewards for this. And I think that this proposal is one of the more interesting ones, because not only will it address the negative situation we have, but it might add a positive competition situation too. Because if I'm now thinking like, okay, well, to be fair, I need to make sure that I'm being balanced, there might be more content that I'm okay with than I'm not okay with. So it's going to force me as an evaluator to be more objective and to be more like, okay, this is on topic and fits, but it's kind of like lazy, like I don't know what the post is supposed to be about. I would give the example of a music video from YouTube, put in the music layer, maybe a title, and that's it, nothing else about it, right? So like if I have only so much energy to use up, I'm going to have to start picking and choosing, like, I hate to be picky, but you know what, objectively, this person's like, oh, here's the lyrics, and this is why I think it's relevant. Or, hey, I hate this song. Do you agree? Versus a random post of a video of a YouTube song with no context. And I'm like, okay, what's your point? Is this a good song? Is this a bad song? Is this an example of something that, like, is there anything to this? So it should lead evaluators to, I guess, be more objective and be more, we got to get away from the habit of voting how we feel.
Right.
In this
supposed to be right.
And think of it more of a task of sorting content and stuff, right?
Yeah,
so
if you had to guess, basically the idea is if you had to guess how everybody in the layer will respond to this particular post, are they going to like it? And are they going to like it because it's on topic? Or are they going to like it because you're, or for reasons that are not really on point? So obviously there's some things people can post that can get upvoted pretty hard. If they hit the right layer with the right collateral issue,
right, and especially if it's a layer, let's say it's a competing layer, like I said, memes and GIFs a minute ago. then maybe the owner of the memes layer or owner of the gifts layer wants to hand out better reward, like wants to like dump energy on people because they want to incentivize people to post in their layer. They're like, hey, look, whenever you post good content here, we're Johnny on the spot about making sure you get your energy. So why don't you come over here to our side instead?
Or like you really don't want people who say GIF to post in the layer. So you sort of get a feel for who says GIF instead of GIF, and then you download their content anyway, sort of type of gaming, which is not what we want to see.
And by the way, we had talked about taking this eval rep and including it somehow, and how do I say this? Including the eval rep for individual layers for a determining factor in how much matter you mine from the lot that you hold in that layer. So
just as an evaluator, Joe? Is that
yeah, exactly. Because it would effectively cause you to go in there and help curate that layer. And if you're not, then you're going to still, you'll get a little bit of mining maybe from that lot.
Right.
But if you're in there actively pushing energy and pushing it in a balanced way, you're pushing the good stuff up and the bad stuff down in a way that is you're accurate for the consensus, then you're going to max out, and that whole thing would be in a competition with the other people that hold lot.
Or explaining why you're downvoting something, because now we're talking about, I like the idea that we're essentially giving more power, sway, influence is a bad word, to the evaluator, but we are asking them to do more work, or as a whole, as denizens, to try to get to more of a neutral or medium point, as equal amount of upvotes as equal amount of downvotes, if I understood you correctly. So I like the idea that we're thinking about the evaluator, but if we're asking them to do more work, I want to know what is their incentive to do so. And then secondly, do we think that we're going to start seeing more downvotes, which is going to be a hindrance to subscribers staying with the platform and not exiting because they're going to get their feelings hurt?
Both great questions. I can briefly hit on both and see where we go from there. The first one, if we're asking evaluators to do more work, is there compensation for that? I think that honestly, the compensation is that right now, there is no way to measure someone's skill set as an evaluator. There is no way to measure how good or bad you are. So right now,
Good point.
You don't actually have a fair way to say, no, I'm really good at this, so I should get to do it.
Or I know a lot more about this particular subject than someone else.
Right. So this does help to where based on merit, you'll be able to be identified as a good evaluator, and then you'll be able to earn more on that potentially. And then on the second point, which was, what was that again? I'm really
hurting someone's feelings and it, affecting retention.
Yeah. So there, I thought about that a little bit too, because there's an underutilized part of Den is the layer chat still. So I think what it might do is it might drive people, I would hope maybe, that it would drive people to shitpost in the chat room where you're not getting evaluated. There's no money being made in there, and there's no reputation being lost either. And then whenever you have something genuinely to contribute that you think is maybe it just ups the threshold for what's a good post, in other words, right? Maybe the chat rooms get better utilized because now it's okay, well, people are using the downvote system where they didn't used to. It used to be whatever you put in, you can roll the dice, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to earn some matter from it. Now it could be more of make people think a little bit, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Admittedly, it does bring more friction to the learning curve, but it also provides a more dynamic website too, where if you want to say, for example, if you just want to post I keep picking on the music layer because it's mine, I guess, and I feel like I don't want to pick on somebody else's layer. But if you want to post just a a music video with no context, you could throw the link into chat and people might see it there. You know what I mean? But if you want to talk about a song and the history of it, or if you want to talk about a song you're writing, or if you want to have a music conversation, right? If you want to open a conversation, then you could post in the layer that gets evaluated, and you have stuff and it keeps it like in that conversation and referenceable too. So you can go back to it and read that convo.
I'm just going to post 10 YouTube videos in the music layer, and I'm going to call it my playlist. I'm not going to tell anybody why I'm doing it.
Yeah, right.
I totally understand your point and get your point. I guess the third thing I'd like to say is that I like this idea. I think it's a good way to tackle a situation where we have fewer subscribers and people trying to game the system, it to earn more matter, et cetera, whatever, and which also translates to a layer that may not have a lot of subscribers and someone trying to do just the same. And it elevates the importance of an evaluator, which you folks were just talking about on World Blockchain today. Can you imagine the person sitting behind the desk that's an evaluator and goes before, I think, Greg, it was you that mentioned that, and then goes before their evaluation. Well, you didn't catch these, but you caught this. Blah, 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 blah.
Well,
I like the idea that
we're turn into a nightmare job, right? It should be something that people do because they're passionate about finding quality.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Now the chat could turn into, as you described, distant. That could kind of turn into kind of the Reddit thing where people start getting ugly in chat, and that's fine.
Keep it in chat. That's fine.
Yeah, keep it in chat. Exactly. That's where I was going.
And it's funny because it's all data.
Make your own anonymous post.
If you look at the chat feed, I mean, it's you see people chatting in line with posting, right? It's almost like maybe some variation of that should be the primary feed where I'm looking at the posts, but I see some chat in here and I can throw chat in for free. Doesn't matter. I can just chat. But if I want to make a post, I have to contribute some energy. I have to, and risk rep and other things like that. But primarily what I was wanting to do is answer the question of the people who worry about the up and all the downvoting stuff. If it is brigaded, and it might be, I don't know. But to answer that in a way that is balanced, not just, you can turn off all downvotes, because that's precisely against what we want. You're going to end up with bad content everywhere because, I can't downvote it because I'd always downvote bad content. Let's say. But if we can further leverage that same rep to tie it to, which a number of people have been asking for people who I think understand the system well have asked this for quite a while. How do we prevent people from just people from just contributing in the LCP and then doing nothing? It's like, I have this lot and I walk away. And now that layer kind of languishes because none of the actual community owners are involved. That if we were to use the same reputation to tie to that, and here's the reason why, because I always considered it somewhat of a responsibility. If you hold, and I'm bad at it quite often, that I don't get in there and like check through all the history posts or through all the meme posts. I try to just go through the feed as far as I can, but then I run out of time, right? But it should be considered, if you're holding ownership in this layer, you have a responsibility to go and help evaluate, to drive content in, everything. Because just simply evaluating and saying, you know what, I'm gonna take 10,000 of my energy. I have a lot of energy. I'm gonna take 10,000 of it and apply it to this layer to make sure that the people who are making consistent good posts have a ton of energy in there. And I'm hoping other people vote them up so the consensus is good. And then I'm providing the weight of that energy to make both the layer in competition with the other layers produce more matter, but then also those users bringing content to produce more matter. And
Joe,
with
how
that,
much,
that's
Joe, how much do you think is related to just a lower subscribership? If we had more numbers, more mass, would some of this go away just naturally?
I think it would be, how do I say, your granularity would be improved. So the edges would be more smoothed over, instead of seeing, oh, I got a ton of downvotes. In the future, if it were, you still might get a ton of downvotes, but those downvotes would be harder to compete against the people who are voting organically, and so that curve,
like a bell curve, it would just be heightened.
Yeah, it'd just be smoother, and I think generally that's almost a certainty. If that means more people would brigade or attack the system, I don't know, but
it might be interesting.
Yeah.
Too, a couple of ideas. One first idea that I was going to mention would be like a zero eval, like, because a lot of times people who want to evaluate don't want to leave something at blank, but they don't really feel one way about it or the other. So the ability to to literally apply 0 negative or 0 positive to it affirmatively might be an interesting data point to add, just to see how many people are reading but not expending their energy one way or the other.
Yeah. I will say the reason that isn't there is because generally what I wanted to do was pull that apart. Like anything that sits in the middle just doesn't get voted on, and it doesn't have any up or down. But I wanted to pull the other two apart, so the good stuff gets pulled up and the bad stuff pulled down.
Yep. Another interesting approach might be like Reddit does with the controversial filter, where like maybe at the first time something gets really heavily downvoted, it gets highlighted in this area.
Yeah, I agree. And the reason you think about it, how amazing would that be if there's a post here that's ranking, but it maybe ranks a little bit higher because we put a badge on it to highlight it, to say, hey, we need your input because 13 people have voted this up and 13 people have voted this down as of right now. Please give your input, and that would drive more people in to say, oh, that's obviously good. So the 13
like if a small group were brigading, then it would make sure that there was no incentive to that, because because if you're going to brigade something, the only way you can effectively keep it from being highlighted to other people is to ignore it.
Yep.
And I think that might go a long way too.
That's a really good point. Because rather than even being a tab, it should probably be in the mainstream and maybe it would be a tab. Maybe it would be something where I'm going to go in and I'm going to find all the ones where people are potentially brigading either way, and I'm going to weigh in and say, oh, well, that's bad. It's like a bunch of
right now. What we have, the two tabs we have are new and hot, and hot is determined purely by consensus up and energy spent positively, right?
Yeah.
So you could potentially have another one that was controversial, or that was like
that could just be based on
it's been getting attention, but it isn't necessarily and it isn't necessarily like consensus negative. It's just like it's been getting a lot of attention and we don't really know yet.
This one has an inordinate amount of energy spent on it.
Hyperion Frequency brought up a point that I want to bring up, and I don't know if I'm going to answer this the way that you're looking for me to address it. But the question is, we're not at scale. This is designed to be operated as like a global, huge, at scale Reddit or bigger type thing. Whatever, it works a lot better. Somebody said that in the replies of this GI too, that at scale some of these problems kind of go away because we don't have such influence from such few people at that point. So Hyperion Frequency was asking, why don't we just do a single vote instead of having a bunch of energy, or you can vote as many times as you want, that kind of stuff. I think that's a good opportunity to talk about how the actual voting algorithm works in the first place, because in a sense you do have that, where whether you're voting 1 energy or you're voting 1,000 energy, you are applying 1 vote to that post, and that counts as 1 vote in the eyes of the consensus mechanism, right? Now, the weight of that vote with the energy on it directly gets applied to the payout of both the evaluator and the content creator, right? So you have 2 sections. You can put in just 1 energy, 1 vote, and you get your 1 vote. You put in 1,000 energy, you still get your 1 vote, but now you have this additional concept of kind of predicting and wagering in this predictive content.
That's what makes it the
thing,
prediction market.
Because since you have a finite resource there. You have a limited number of energy every day that is free and refilled, but it's still limited every day. You can choose to bet on that. Let's say, you know what, I know this community, I'm here all the time, I know what they like, I'm freaking positive that they're going to love this, or I'm freaking positive that nobody's going to like this garbage. Well, you can dump as much energy as you want on it, and what you're going to do is you're going to see if you're right, if you're correct, if consensus is the way that you voted. Then if you look at your payouts, you're going to get a bigger payout for that evaluation. And on the other end, the content creator is going to get a bigger reward because they wrote something that was obviously in tune with what the community wants to see. They wrote something that was, thoughtful enough for the evaluators to go in and wager their hard-earned energy on your content.
And the interesting part too is if it's let's say it's great content for this layer, and yet I don't like something about it, or I misunderstand what the layer itself wants. I vote big energy down, and I say, I hate this, right? I'm going to vote huge energy down. But all of the other evaluators, the consensus is that this is really good content. All of my energy goes still to reward that producer. The negative is it's considered as an absolute value. It doesn't matter which direction I voted. The energy is what the size of the market is when it's competing with other content. And there's also, by the way, something in there already, and it is not tuned as we would like to see in the white paper, because we never defined what an active user is to count. But there is already a set quorum, which also tunes that if you have only a couple of people that are brigading the downvote, they can't have the effect without the quorum that you might have. And, we want, I think in the end, once we have things like eval rep and content rep, and then using a subscriber count and things like that, we could effectively tune that quorum so that in smaller layers, it's a smaller quorum, and bigger layers, it's harder to attack content. So anyway.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, man.
Just to reiterate High Frequency's point, he's absolutely right, and you've mentioned too, Joe. The layer owners have to get involved in their layers. Yeah. We talked about attacks. If they don't, that's something to
it'll
circle back to eventually.
Right. Well, I think that's why if we take this eval rep and we say, look, the effective curation, management, development of a layer depends highly on its evaluation. And if we tied that evaluation and the reputation of your evaluation in that layer for which you hold lot, it makes a really good balance to say you are going to compete with other lot owners in that layer for the amount of matter that layer generates. So you're both going to want to expand that and do a better job of evaluating the content to make it the best possible layer that it could be for content for anybody just reading it. And that's how you get your best mining. That's what I think we need to do. When you started going through all this, it's like, man, that all just makes sense.
Right.
Can you imagine?
Ultimately, for gaining content is maybe advantageous to you in the short term, but in the long term, it kills your layer because it makes it sterile. It makes it so that only the people that are in your in group, are getting rewards, and that's a very, very small percentage of the total that could exist if you you elevate new voices. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Can you imagine instead of you have a trending button at the top, and then you have like a catfish button next to it for all the bottom feeders, so to see all the junk posts, all the negative posts. The worst posting is the bottom, and just swim down there at the bottom.
I love that, especially if you found
negativity and junk
postings. You got something great hidden down there that should not have been down there. You might come up with buried treasure.
Yeah, exactly. Voted up.
It would almost be like you could almost implement some kind of bonus reward for rescuing buried treasure. You know?
Oh yeah, that's
Of course,
not a bad
there's a
idea.
time frame though. There's a time frame though. To
Yeah.
do that. I'm the same way. I like, at least I it's so rare for me to downvote something, and if I do, I feel like I got to explain why.
You know something. We have a definition. It's not implemented. It's on the list for a formalized cross post. What that is, let's say that Dave posts something to music that happens to be super interesting to political. Maybe it's a political song or something, to politics. So I say, you know what? I think it performed well in politics. Dave didn't think about it, so I cross posted. If I'm correct, I get a little bit of the cut from that, but Dave gets the lion's share of it being in politics.
So
but if I'm wrong, it doesn't penalize Dave. So if I cross post to the wrong places, there's no way to attack Dave's content with it.
Right.
What if we had something similar as a repost? That is, this is content that for some reason was missed. It might have been on, maybe the day that they posted or something else. You could do the same thing. It's like, this needs to be posted.
Yeah, a buried treasure lair itself would be pretty badass.
A repost. A repost.
Yeah, where it's like reposts only, and the criteria are this wasn't highlighted heavily in the lair that it was originally posted in, but it's great content.
Yeah, we effectively need more devs, just so you guys know. So anything we can do, we need more devs because there's so much that we need to build.
Can't they do something?
I want to clarify what Hyperion Frequency was saying. So let's see. Basically, what he was saying was that we could have a system where instead of one general vote, like we're already presumably taking into account the quality of a post, the timeliness, the utility of it, the whatever accuracy of it, all these different angles, different dimensions of what makes a post good, and assigning a relative score to that, or based on our judgment, right? So what he was actually saying is we could have multiple specific metrics where you can apply this much energy to the, let's say, the on-topicness of it, and this much energy to the timeliness of it, and this much energy to the uses a few examples in here. I was just talking to him.
Wow.
But basically, that's the idea. Is like going at it with different dimensions. Then you could list things by okay, what's the most what's the most current timely thing, or what's
I can
the
tell
most
you
this type of.
I will tell you, Hype Freak is very. What's the word I want? He's very in tune with what's going on, because I will tell you, when we wrote the tagging system, the original design, in fact, the implementation of the tagging system allows a variable amount of energy to be applied to the tag. So you could effectively not only vote on the content, but you could vote, oh, this is original, I'm going to put 10,000 energy on it. And you'd be competing there. We decided to pull back on that because it got so complex with the interface. It was so, you imagine.
On the payout side, it was complex on the payout side, right?
The payout side, actually, no, it was complex on the interface, on how do we explain to it's hard enough to explain to them about variable energy votes in a prediction market.
That's actually what I was saying in chat. That's my only concern is adding. So there's already a learning curve. Yeah. It's a new thing. So we have to be really careful and very creative and skillful about how we present that, how it works, so that it's not scary.
But bingo, right there. There's your incentive for the evaluator. The evaluator has spent time understanding and the knowledge of how Den works to reap the rewards of tagging, etc.
Yeah, and you could turn on, like,
actually.
if you have a certain reputation, or if you've done enough things to, like, say, how to evaluate effectively, you're really helping the system out. Maybe it turns on the ability to turn on an advanced setting and now compete in the tags.
Right.
Or
like maybe it's a community role that gets voted on. Maybe you get assigned to be an advanced evaluator, which gives you access to the advanced function.
And if you go dormant, you lose that ability.
Yeah.
Joe brought up something interesting that I haven't thought of before, which is not even exposing advanced features until you've used the system a little bit and demonstrated to it that you know how to use even the basic portion of it, because there is this trade-off between learning curve, friction of onboarding, scariness to new users, that kind of thing, versus legitimately powerful tools that, if understood, can be amazing to any community that wants to use them. So maybe there is some sort of like starter. Maybe you
I'm
have
a level.
certain, I don't know if this is fair. I'll just throw it out there, but maybe you have to have a certain reputation. So let's say a voter reputation before you can access the advanced features. But is that just is that unbalancing? I don't know if that's
could just
right
see I could
But
see somebody describing themselves. I'm a level 3 denizen.
Dude, yes,
we did
like
have
RPG style progression on profiles, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, we did have, in fact, speaking of badges, one of the devs brought up that, he talked to his wife about it even. And she said, "Oh, why not badges?" And making it less granular, like say, instead of saying your reputation is 89.368, right? That it would be, you have this freaking badge. You're a badass evaluator. You're a badass content creator. It makes it very simple for normies. And yeah, you could maybe do some introspection and find out what your actual score is, if you're on a cusp or anything. But normal person would just say, and I even think for marketing, that's what first thing I thought of is, how beautiful would it be if someone said, "Well, how did you get that badge?" It isn't, "Oh, I know a board member of Twitter, right? That's how I get my freaking check mark." It is, "I did these things. I'm really good at it," right? And that just becomes so much more valuable and so much more attractive to someone who wants to do that.
Right. Sort of like, and you've also already got a built-in UX metaphor, right? Because everybody understands, for the most part, that's in Web3 space, like the concept of unlocking achievements and milestones in video games.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like it's a gated thing. And like now, Lisa adds one more amazing idea too, which would be an evaluator score per tag, which potentially that could just be used on the back end to help. Theoretically, I don't know this. You have to be careful with some of the weighting stuff, but imagine if there was a way to sort. I'm going to search for tags original, and so it's going to show me consensus of original. But what if I was able to go to an advanced? No, give me the stuff that's really original, and that would be scored based upon the weight of the predictors of the consensus that shows. I don't know if that would be effective or not, but that could be really powerful.
I think that there's definitely a path to that pretty directly from this proposal, because if you're already applying a layer specific evaluator score, then like the history layer, for example, could give out a badge saying, "Oh, you're good at evaluating history stuff," that kind of thing.
Period. Well, actually, you're excellent about ancient. You're excellent about early America, right?
Mm-hmm. And then there's badges for evaluator. There's a separate, list of badges for content provider. Another badge for tagging. Another, you know what I mean? Or levels within.
Oh wait, I'm going to say something here too. Theoretically, we'd have to look at the numbers. This is something you just kind of need to look at the data, but it might be really effective to say for the posts that let's say it's period. So let's say it's ancient. It's in history layer. The ancient history tag, a separate evaluation score per tag by consensus. So if it's if this is the consensus shows this is a post about ancient history, that we can look what is Joe's eval rep for ancient history posts.
Yeah, that would be. Right? That would be, you wouldn't even have to necessarily, that could all be on the back end. But whenever a particular denizen adds a tag, it could be, okay, the person adding this tag, what is their history with this tag, with this type of tag? Is their accuracy usually pretty spot on historically with this type of tag? And if so, maybe that could add more weight to the tag more immediately. Do we want to?
That's true.
Do we want to look at, there's a couple of, I don't mean to be rushing things, but there's a couple of replies to this GI. Maybe we can address
I do
those.
have a hard stop, so just to know, but I
Okay.
might have to drop off, but we need to go through these.
Okay, so there was I think 2 points, unless somebody has added something since. One of them was, should we just focus on factor instead of this? And my response to that, if you read down, was this is kind of one of the things that it's one of the factors that we would use in factor with the implementation.
And as to that, I mean, this is behind the scenes info. It would be best to wait for some of the factor stuff because there's the one group that's actually finalizing some of it that we will just automatically, in helping them test it, be plugging it into Den and then slowly, hooking it to some of these things. So it's almost like that'll almost happen as part of that other project. So,
and I think that if I'm reading, unless I'm reading this wrong, I think that the point behind this was that if factor serves as effectively like a KYC without actually KYCing, but
right.
this is an account that isn't a duplicate or isn't a bot or isn't a whatever.
Right.
You're basically KYCing to an identity. That doesn't mean that you're KYCing with like a man or whatever. But that would that not? I think the question really is, would that not solve this too? With the issue with people like
it would, but you would then have to know how to either weight them or because it could be, the beauty is once we plug in factor, we could, let's say you have a KYC, or we say, okay, you've verified a number of things that makes it more likely that you're not just somebody's side account just to downvote stuff, right? But some of that could, it could be, oh yeah, they registered an ID, even though, they're not sharing it with us, but we have proof that they are a unique individual. That's pretty powerful. And then the other side would be their eval rep, their content rep, other things that require work, right? It requires, people actually doing it. And if you're only downvoting, your eval rep's going to be crap. If you aren't posting any content, it's going to be 0. So if you have even if they're not perfect scores, they're going to be something. And then imagine saying, I don't want anyone to be able to vote here unless they have at least this score of identity, right? Which is another thing that would then not care about how they're voting, but just to say, I just want to know it's a real person voting and not somebody's side account, right? Anyway, that's powerful too. So that I do definitely think it's a big fit.
Cool. Once again, I had something, but I started reading and lost it again. I think.
What was I?
Okay. What's the next one? Maybe I'll remember.
We covered that. I agree that we should move on away from the leaderboard right now, that this is more precedent. But I still believe that the larger issue here is, the symptom is we don't have enough users, that it would, it would eliminate the problem that we're experiencing in Hispania.
At least reduce it.
It probably would. It would reduce it. You would still have a signal to noise ratio that was worse than if we did have this system. So I think that because if you have a bunch of more people adding, if you have a bunch more inputs, it'll outweigh the ones that are.
Speaking of which, and this an analogous thing, and this might be too abstract, but there was a study way back where they found that when you have low enough audio levels that you can actually pull out more information by adding noise, which is counterintuitive. Anyway.
Right, you get a kind of sensitivity background. That is,
right.
Yeah,
it's weird.
That's sort of the concept behind the studio recording, even, right? Is to isolate the instruments in soundproof environments, so you can take the levels down.
Yeah.
Cool. So yes and yes on that one. At scale it'll be great. But also it'll work even that much better at scale, even with this. So I don't think that that's something that is I don't think it should be ignored now, because the whole point, one of the reasons that we even got here was because we had the issue where we almost decided, or we at least proposed as DENDAO to shut down a layer because there were so many problems that we needed to come up with a solution for. And the idea was to temporarily shut it down while we had to give us time to build tools that would solve the issue. And since that was denied, which honestly, I think that's great that it was denied, because there was a few people saying like, this is not decentralized. You're shutting it down unilaterally, but then it didn't pass. So like, see, no, not always. But that aside, I think that one of the reasons that makes this more pressing is because that didn't pass, and we don't have the luxury of like turning off. I don't want to call it a problem, but turning off something that was causing a problem while we can work.
And
so this up.
Just speaking of that, Dave, like I've read that GA, and I was like, oh, I don't know, like this seems like a pretty gray area, and some of the comments were pretty passionate from people who were part of that layer. Which also, by the way, another good idea, I think, for sometime down the road would be to integrate something like Twitter has integrated, where you can translate into whatever language with a click. Because I did have to do some pasting to translate to see what people were saying. But after reading through it, I was really kind of I was torn on the right answer, because because it seemed like maybe the right answer isn't to take this out of circulation, but rather to bring people into a conversation. Granted, one that was multilingual, so it did the job
of a DAO. Yeah, it did exactly the job of a DAO, which is bring this to like an official conversation, bring the tension to it, get feedback, allow everybody to vote on it, and see what the overall consensus is on the decision. In this case, it was more important that we just get on with it and fix shit as we find problems, instead of trying to turn something off because it wasn't working right.
And I think that's my point too, is as we add more code to solve these types of problems that we've encountering, we're moving further and further down the line towards decentralization, where the code is going to handle those things, and then key. Backup is the DAO.
That's key. That's key. Yes. Because honestly, and we do have to close out the call, but honestly, that's key in a way that I think is fundamentally the most important thing to be able to scale up the way that Den will be able to, right? Is because if the code is handling the majority of these issues, then the overhead of DENDAO goes dramatically down.
And the DAO is the safety net at that point.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And the thing to add new vision, right? Say, hey, we should add this. Then that's a DAO function, right? So
Yeah. Well, it's a security against against centralization through accumulation. Because if you give a voice to everybody, and the people with the most to lose are the people with the biggest stakes, right? They're going to be more like, I could have exercised a little bit more than the average bearer's amount of power on that one, because of involvement in World Blockchain Roundtable, but I refrained because I wanted to wait and see how other people voted that didn't have as much built up ability to exercise influence.
Yeah, thanks for getting a temperature check before you weighed in your whale hammer.
Right. Yeah, I know exactly. It's like, and I think that's going to be incumbent upon people who, especially all of us here right now, are one day going to be the whales of this place.
Joe, you can go ahead and go. I'll see you on the next call. Okay.
Thanks a bunch.
So, hey, I feel like that came out right, and to anybody who's listening to this that is glad that didn't get shut down. I'm going to be far less inclined going forward to support any solution that involves shutting down a layer. In the interim, while a solution's found, just based on the outcome.
Well, good. We need you around. Thank you, both of you, for joining, and everyone in chat. I didn't realize we got started a little bit late, so it's actually after when we were supposed to have stopped. So I just want to say that if you have not voted, or if you want to read over everything that we were talking about today, to make sure you have a firm grip on what we're proposing here, what the effects will have, what it's intended to mitigate, go look at the DENDAO governance proposal. There's a little hammer on the right side of your screen. If you're logged in and you click on that, it'll show you all the proposals. By default, I think it shows you the little flag icon, which is the ones that you can vote in for the different layers. But if you click on the right-hand side, there is an icon that looks like the DEN icon, and you can click on that to get the list of proposals that are DENDAO proposals. And you can go in there and you can vote on it whichever way you want. So there's the hammer. If you click on that, it brings up this, and then you click on the little icon on the right, and that gives you just the DENDAO. So on the very left is all of your layers that you're an owner of that you can vote on, and that gives you a list of that. And then on the very right is the DENDAO, which is the one where even if you're not an owner, you still get a vote. Every denizen has a behavior-based weight in governance. This has nothing to do with tokens. It has everything to do with behavior-based governance. It has a little bit to do with tokens because there is a liquidity pools and stuff like that. But even that is a behavioral metric because we want people to go add liquidity. So if you want more of a vote, that's the last thing I'll say. If you want to have more of a say in the direction of DEN, you can do all of the things that the behavioral governance gives you more weight for. Those things are there's a creator portion. There is I'm losing it right here. There's 3 portions. There's a founder vote, there's a creator vote, and there's the other vote, which I forget the third one is. Owner, yeah, creator, owner, and founder. And those are all taken from different metrics on how you operate on DEN. And so if you want, you can talk in DEN about what all that means. You can ask questions in there. I'll try to make sure I answer them in either the DEN layer or the DEN support layer may be more appropriate. But yeah, that's how you take control of this is you have basically merit or sweat equity, that kind of thing. You go do the things and you get governance weight for it. So go vote on that. That's the one that's open. And then next week we will be able to see what the result was and move forward. So thank you, everyone. Anything that we need to hit real quick? I don't really have any time, but anything super small that we want to hit?
I would only like to say I really appreciate Hyperion and all of his input, and same with 100%. You, Lisa.
Agreed, Beth. High fives for that one. Like, I guess that would be our marketing firm uses the taco emoji to give each other props in their Slack. So I would say the tacos for Hyperion frequency, because that's a win. Thank you so much for your contributions, man. It's part of why it's fun to be a part of this place.
Yep, I agree. Thank you. Thank you to everyone. So I will see everyone probably a couple of times next week. You know, we got Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday things going on. I'm sorry, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday things going on DEN. Super Happy Dragon Lucky on Tuesdays. Coffee with Den on Wednesdays. I've shortened that to an hour. That's much better. So check that out. And then World Blockchain and DENDAO on Thursdays. And that's all I've got. Thanks, everyone. See you. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you around. Bye.
Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best.
Adaptable, all capital, label radical yet rational. Adaptable approach is palpable if this animal is fallible. But that conclusion is laughable, so with for all detachable from the mandible, you see it now.